care if you interrupt me.
Wait.
I'll try not to kick you.
Well,
Northeast Kingdom voice. Northeast Kingdom. See, I have the Vermont voice on the radio. This is the Northeast Kingdom voice. All set?
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, this is Scott Wheeler, the host of the Okay, I just barely said it. All right, here we go.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, this is Scott Wheeler, the host of the Northeast Kingdom Voice. For months and possibly, how long have you been doing this for?
2 years
For
almost.
2 years, okay, for 2 years.
I'm guessing
8?
8.
Holy smokes.
I'm kidding, Scott.
All right, here we go. All right, I don't need a count.
Okay.
Maybe
Maybe that's messing you up.
Hello, this is Scott Wheeler, the host of the Northeast Kingdom Voice. For 2 years, there has been a group occupying the Lowell Mountain Range in protest of ongoing... you might get up to 8
We haven't been on the mountain for 2 years.
for protest.
Right, yeah. Year and a half.
All right, year.
Yeah.
18 months.
18 months.
6.
Is it?
Woo! All right, I'm going to get this
That's
right. I might have to even shorten it up. Hello! Here,
Hold
these
it.
people over here, there. Hello, this is Scott Wheeler. Hello, this is Scott Wheeler, the host of the Northeast Kingdom Voice. For the last 18 months, a group of people have been occupying the Lowell Mountain Range in protest of an ongoing wind project. Today's guests are 2 members of that group, Steve Wright and Stacy Burke. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank
Great
you,
to
Scott.
be here, Scott.
So you've been occupying Lowell Mountain. What does that mean?
Stacy, you want to take a shot at that?
Well, we first started actually going up on the mountain last September. And the first time I went up, we actually found the property lines of Don and Shirley Nelson and saw that there was a dispute between where their property line was and where Green Mountain Power wanted to put the crane path and turbine.
And how come this wind project concerns you?
Well, that's a long and tangled response, Scott. But really, the simple answer is it's a destruction of part of the natural landscape of Vermont, and that mountain is 450 million years old, and it's being sacrificed to a project that will last maybe 25 years.
Now, are you against wind farms, or are you against the placement where it's being placed?
We're for good, creative, helpful, responsible climate change action and shifting to renewables from fossil fuel sources of energy. The biggest problem here that we're facing statewide is that we don't have a functional, statewide, carefully considered energy plan. We're dealing with a plan currently referred to as a comprehensive energy plan that was written by bureaucrats and utilities with very little input from plain old folks of Vermont. And we need a plan that speaks to Vermonters' needs and not necessarily the bureaucrats and utilities' needs. Now, I've been a bureaucrat. I know what it's like to be a bureaucrat, and I don't like speaking ill of bureaucrats, but in this situation, we've not paid enough attention to the values represented by our intact landscape, values of social values, ecological values, especially ecological values, and the role that these mountains play in our water supplies, just as one simple fact.
Now, here's a picture. What does this picture portray?
Well, that's what the ridgeline looked like before Green Mountain Power started to mangle it. Now,
How would you describe it? What was the Lowell Mountain Range like?
well, the ridgeline it's a series of clines, and I have a son who's a geologist, so I learned some of these words from him. I'm not a geologist, I'm a biologist by profession, but synclines and anticlines, tilted schist and granite up on that up on that ridge line where you have some rather sharp definitions of the ridge itself. In between these declivities, you have these small functional wetlands, and that's the shot that we're looking at right now. We're looking at intact wetlands, which are really just big sponges, and they're soaking up water, and then it's flowing down through the mountain, and then it comes out below where humans take advantage of it for commercial enterprises or for home use or whatever.
Now, did you both hike up there before the construction began?
I did. Yeah, there's probably a core group of about 10 of us that were hiking up almost every day. And it was just amazing to see how these machines came and just knocked everything down. And they went so fast. Every day you went up, it looked different.
Do you think if you look at the damage that's been done, once these wind towers come down, will it be able to go back to wilderness, at least the way it was?
I don't.
Go ahead.
It's hard to imagine because of all the blasting that they did of the rock. I mean, there's places where rock is filled in valleys that is 50 or 60 feet high, and it's just, it's great. It's more than gravel. It's hard. I don't know what the technical terms are for what they've done, but it's pretty devastating.
Well, the mountain has been reshaped,
Right.
and the mountain is 450 million years old. So if we have 450 million years to wait for it to be reshaped again by tectonic forces and other geological stuff, then maybe the technical answer is that this part of the planet will get reestablished. But in terms of a practical space of time that humans can get their arms around and their heads around, no, it's changed forever.
So
And the water flows through that mountain are changed forever.
So when did you start camping out at the site?
Well, I've been camping out there since 1971, but that was in my role at Sterling, where I was teaching and using the area as an outdoor lab, sort of. More recently, Stacy and the occupiers have been going up there often. I'm an old, churlish guy right now with worn out knees and legs, and so that's my excuse for not getting up on the mountain.
So what is life like at the camp?
Well, right now, during the week, it's really noisy with all the construction. But when we first started going up, it was beautiful. It was just like being out in the wilderness, and the views. There weren't a lot of views when we first started going up now, but now there's so much clear cut that
Right.
you can see forever up there.
Now, were you one of the people who got yourself arrested?
I didn't get arrested. I was one of the support crew.
Right.
Mm.
So you chose not to be arrested that day?
Yeah, I couldn't get arrested because of my job, and I was going to have a background check done, so I didn't think it would look too good.
Right. And that's still an ongoing process through the legal system.
Right.
Right. And I know that the interesting aspect of that is my former boss at the Chronicle, when I worked there years ago, he was covered as a reporter, and he was even swept up and arrested.
He was. I remember that day. I was one of the support group for that day, and Chris stood up on this stump, and the sheriffs came over and said, "Chris, you have to leave." And he said, "No, I'm reporting. I'm reporting this arrest." And I got out of the way because I could tell that they were ready to start handcuffing people.
Right.
But he really stood his ground.
So are you receiving more support than you originally did following those arrests? Or are you getting less?
I think we've done a good job of educating people. I mean, when I first heard about the wind towers going up on the Lowell Mountains, I actually thought, oh wow, how cool is that? I don't really want to say that sitting too close to him, but because I was ignorant of what was really going to happen.
I will say is I've struggled, to be honest, I've struggled with the pros and cons of it. The photos you have, though, really are at least shows about what is going on up there. Now, explain this photo.
Well, the second shot is actually what has to happen, represents what has to happen before construction comes along. The fundamental progression here is clear cutting, then blasting, then clear cutting, then blasting, and then road building, and then turbine installation. And right now we're toward the end of the blasting and road building segments. And before long, the turbine sites will be available, and turbines will be coming into the rail yard in Island Pond, and they'll be trucked to the site. But what we're seeing in this particular picture is a clear-cut site, and we know from existing regulations via Forest Parks and Recreation Department, and in some situations the Fish and Wildlife Department and other units of the Agency of Natural Resources, that we're not allowed to do that level of clear cutting at 2,500 feet. But that's a provision that gets pushed aside when we're talking about so-called Section 248 development. In other words, utility development.
Right.
Those things don't apply. So what we're looking at is a clear-cut site at about 2,500 feet elevation, soon to be blasted
Right.
and reshaped into a road.
Now, even by this point, there's been a lot of changes to the mountain. You have a road up to it, and how? Whoops, Todd, I screwed up there. Just a second here. I'll try to keep it same. Let me see here. So, are you all set, Todd? Yep. So at this point, so at this point, is there any stop in it, or is this more just standing your ground and hoping that you can stop other wind projects from going on other ridge lines? Because, you look at it now and you say, boy, things have really progressed. Can we really stop this? What is your intent?
There are two things happening right now.
Right.
In response to your specific question, yes, a definitive yes. We're going to use the Lowell situation, the Lowell Mountain situation, as a poster child for bad decision making with regard to proper energy development.
Right.
And the second thing that's going on is that the towns of Albany and Craftsbury, who have intervenor status, which means it's the same thing as party status in an Act 250 proceeding, and we can be at the table legally as long as we keep paying our lawyer to represent us there. We're at the table and participating in this struggle to protect the citizens' interests of the towns of Albany and Craftsbury. Because as this mountaintop is blasted away and changed forever, the water flows that come off that mountain into the village of Albany, which is particularly vulnerable, and in the area, the Town Line Road area in Craftsbury, which is where Seaver Branch comes down into, where there's a lot of public investment in roads and bridges, not to mention people's homes. That's the second thing we're working to assure right now. We're trying to protect the interests of the people of Albany and Craftsbury.
So I just picked up the paper this morning, and I saw there's another proposed wind project in the news in Island Pond, and I guess that's not getting very much support at the moment. Have people who oppose that project, have they contacted you folks for advice?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, we've had a lot of people, call. One of the reasons why they found us was because of the blog, which you can find. If you go to Lowell Mountain News.
The one argument I hear for the towers is, geez, we want to get rid of Vermont Yankee, and if we have the wind towers up, we'll finally be able to decommission it and get it out of the way. Is that feasible?
No. The simple answer is no with a big exclamation point.
Right. Now,
There
why is that?
There is no relationship between whether Vermont Yankee lives or dies and the placement of industrial wind turbines on Vermont ridgelines, especially Lowell Mountain.
Right.
And the reason is that Vermont Yankee represents a kind of power source that is
Right.
referred to as base load.
Right.
That means it's running all the time. It is always available.
Mm-hmm.
The wind doesn't always blow.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, the turbine installation is referred to as intermittent power. And intermittent power cannot replace baseload power. It's like suggesting that a car that occasionally starts can replace a car that's sitting there running all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. So whether or not we have Vermont Yankee is meaningless
Right.
as to whether or not we have turbines on Lowell Mountain or additional turbines anywhere in Vermont that are grid fed.
Right.
And this goes, the power that will be generated from this particular project will go into the New England grid. It will not necessarily go into Vermont homes. There's no power line that comes off here with a 3-point plug that plugs into any homes in Lowell or Albany or Craftsbury or Irisburg or Westfield or anywhere.
So what is your answer to feed our ever-growing thirst for energy?
Our answer for the long run with Vermont is to invest seriously in 2 approaches.
Mm-hmm.
One is solar, and 2 is aggressive action on efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
We can especially reduce the use of home heating fuels in that situation, thereby reducing our carbon emissions, reducing our dependence on oil itself and fossil fuels. That's what we need to be doing, and that's what we're trying to bring forward with all of this, the efforts that we make. We're trying to help the state of Vermont reshape its energy future.
No, I'm not an energy expert by any means, but I did once write a book on the Clyde River fishery
Oh,
and
Wow.
how the utilities used to. At one point, they ran it kind of hard, but then once the rules of the game changed, they started operating differently. Hydro, though, we have hundreds of dams that are currently holding back water. Is hydro a possibility if we were to look at those dams, retrofit them, and operate them according to today's standards? Or is hydro even feasible?
I read a paper a couple of weeks ago that was done by the Agency of Natural Resources, and that paper pointed out that we have taken advantage of the existing hydroelectric facilities that we really have in Vermont, and that there's very limited possibility for expansion. It goes on to say that there is the possibility for individual home facilities that might be. I have a situation in my own house on the Black River Falls in Craftsbury, that might take an installation of a Pelton wheel or something like that.
Okay.
So there are limited possibilities. The big sites are basically in use.
Right, okay.
And I'd just like to say that with the cost of this project, is it 160 million?
$160 million.
It seems like you could do a lot of
Yes.
preventative
Right,
energy saving with that amount of money without devastating the landscape.
right. Okay, talking about devastating the landscape, explain this next photo.
That's a picture of a blast that was taken on the east side of the Lowell Mountains near the Bailey-Hazen Road. And it's quite a distance from where the blast took place. It's probably a mile away.
Now, how far have you been? How close have you been to the blast site when it went off?
Really close. Like, I don't know. I have a hard time with distance. I would say 1/8 of a mile away.
Right. And what is that like? loud?
It's really loud, and the rock that goes up in the air and the dust is just, you know, I really don't have the words to explain it.
And
Even
they did try to shoo you off first, I assume, you know, move you away.
Yeah, they had these foghorns, blasting horns,
Right.
that would give you a warning that they were coming, and sometimes they would have to tell us to come and get back, and we would all stand back with the workers. You know, we weren't being stupid about it. If we saw them getting out of the way, we certainly weren't going to.
So there are people, though, and you've read about it in the paper, who are blaming you for costing this project even more, thus it'll be passed on to the ratepayers. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, actually, what we're trying to do is to save Vermont ratepayers money by having a more effective energy planning process and an effective long-term energy plan in Vermont.
Okay.
The rates that will emerge imposed on Vermonters, on the customers, from wind projects are going to be higher than basically anything we have functional right now. So the ratepayers are going to get hosed by high prices, high electrical prices. The more aggressively they approach, the more aggressively wind energy is installed.
Not to mention the 48
million.
48 million in tax incentives that is going towards the project.
Right. And those tax incentives are actually drying up, according to what I watched on the news a couple nights ago, and those might be going away, and I guess the wind companies are a little nervous about that.
Well, they've mounted an immense lobbying effort, and one of the issues there that our entire congressional delegation, Senator Sanders, Senator Leahy, and Congressman Welch, all support the production tax credit extension.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to educate them and demonstrate to them that the production tax credits, as they get expressed in Vermont, are a serious problem for Vermonters and for the landscape of Vermont. Not to mention the fact that it's a subsidy, that it's basically giving away taxpayer money to a subsidy that's not going to last more than a business that's not going to last more than 25 years.
Okay. All right. Well, with only about 10 more minutes left, let's move on to the next picture. And what is this?
Well, that is the junction of the 2-mile-long access road going east-west off Route 100, where it connects with the Ridgeline Road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the largest construction spots on the entire mountain. It's right near turbine 8 or 9, I
Yeah,
think.
it's actually 7's right at the
Thank you.
top. Yeah, that bottom
Stacy is
road.
the expert on our turbine locations.
The bottom road is the access road, and then it goes right up to Site Tower 7. And to the left would be where we were camping in front of 6.
I have actually been invited a couple times to take a trip up there, and
You
I think
should.
yeah, I really do want to, because, you know, as a history writer, some people might say, how come you're interested in this? This is modern day. No, with history, some things that are a lot of things that happen today are going to be a big part of our history, and I look at this as part of our history. All right, now let's look at this photo. What is
Well,
what is this showing?
that's an after things are blasted and during road construction. That's what the mountain has been converted to.
Is that? Did you say before the show that that's the same, basically the same place as the
Yes.
first photo
Yes.
was taken, the
Yes.
lush green place?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of the arrests took place. In fact, the day that this photo was taken, the protesters stopped that tractor-trailer truck from
Right.
moving.
Now, you don't, when you say stop the tractor trailers, you probably don't have anything against the workers themselves, because they're
No.
only...
Not at all. They were all really gracious to us when we were up there.
Okay, one last photo. I think this shows your encampment.
Stacy's the camp expert.
Yeah.
So explain where the encampment is, because the tents are rather small.
The tents are small, and it's right off of the border line that Green Mountain Power occupies the land, and we were camped on Don and Shirley Nelson's land.
Did you stay there in the winter too?
We were up there a lot in the winter. We didn't spend the night in the winter.
Right.
We did it just to keep an eye on things so that, again, we could educate people and what was actually happening.
All right, you have about 5 more minutes left. You wanted to talk about an event that you have coming up when?
It's May 18th, and it's going to be at the Town Hall in Albany. And we're going to have some music and desserts and 2 speakers. One speaker is a man from Sheffield, Steve Theron,
Right.
who is experiencing firsthand what these wind towers are like to live next to. He lives about 3/4 of a mile. And he said the worst days he's had yet were 3 days of what sounded like a jet engine humming. And he told me that he has to move. He just can't take it.
I know he spoke, I was in Derby Line this last weekend. I was there not as a person who supports or objects to the wind towers that are going up there, but as documenting history again. And Steve also spoke there at that largely Canadian protest. Was either one of you there?
Oh, yes, I
Steve
was there.
was, yeah.
I was there with my camera. I remember seeing you, Scott. I was chasing in and out of the crowd. We counted those. There were somewhat short of between 150 to 200 people.
Wow, it's a big one.
And yeah, that was an interesting event.
I was interested by the large number of media cameras there. I think the only
almost
one,
all from Canada.
right. I will say I've been growing increasingly impressed by Fox 44 because they seem to be really covering our region, which is, a good thing, a bad thing. When we do something wrong, they're also here. But I've been really, I'm a devout WCAX person, but I have got to say is Fox 44, they seem to be everywhere lately.
Well, that was the only statewide media unit, print media, electronic media, radio, or TV. That was the only statewide unit present there.
Right.
And we're constantly trying to encourage the media to do a better job of covering this
Do
from a
you
statewide
think the media
perspective.
would focus a little more if these were being proposed, say, for Mount Mansfield to Camel's Hump?
You're kidding me, right? Yeah. Yes, I suspect they would. In fact, I heard a rumor last week that there was going to be a Lake Champlain wind park, or Lake Champlain wind farm. And there was a photo, an altered photo of a portion of Lake Champlain with wind turbines out in the lake. So you can only imagine what reaction that would get from Chittenden County.
Right. So again, when is the date and the location and the time?
It's May 18th,
7 to 9.
7 to 9. And there's also going to be a wind expert that's going to be a speaker, and there'll be lots of photographs and a slideshow going on.
And food.
And food.
Well,
Good food.
dessert.
Desserts.
So this is a celebration for us. This has been a painful process in many, many ways. But we're going to celebrate our continuing relationship with that mountain and the efforts that we've made to protect the interests of the citizens of the region, especially Albany and Craftsbury. So we're going to get together and have some fun and have some music and some good food and a lot of hugs, and we'd invite anyone to come share that with us.
Your aerial photos, you can't get the full scope of what's going on without these aerial photos.
Well, that was Dan Garvin at Lakeview Aviation was my pilot the first day, and John took me up the second day. So and obviously I got back safely. So they did a great job, and I enjoyed flying with them.
Dan takes me up whenever I need something. I from the sky, and I had never flown in a small airplane before, and I managed to get back on the ground and feeling good.
With no air sickness.
No.
Good.
I've been up several times with him. So, any last words?
This really, Scott, in my opinion, this whole issue is about how humans choose to live on the land. and whether or not humans can live on the land without tearing it up and thereby treating themselves even worse in the long run. That's
You know
the
what-
message we're trying to deliver.
You know what I find in watching this as more of a documenter than being involved is this is one of those issues that you can't stereotype who's for it and who's
Right.
against it because if I want to talk politically, I've seen some extremely left-leaning people against it and for it, but then you'll have extremely right-leaning people who will be they're all interdispersed. This really isn't a political issue, and it seems to, no matter what side you're on, it seems to be a whole mingle of people.
Exactly. And for the first time since we've been working on this issue, this year in the Senate, right toward the end of the session, Senator Benning brought forth an effort for a moratorium.
Right.
That is a session of developing wind energy right now until we've gone back and looked at this much more carefully.
Okay.
So we appreciate his work,
Yeah.
and we'll continue working with him on that.
Okay. All
I
right.
think I'd just like to say one of the most frustrating parts for Steve and I were talking about on the way up here is how so many people just feel like it's a done deal and there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
But we just can't seem to be quiet.
Right. Okay, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this. Wait. Todd. Two. I know I was. All right, So I want to thank both of you for coming on. And sharing your story as mountaintop. Todd. Here I go. I want to thank both of you for coming on and sharing your story. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome, Scott.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
There.
What a hoot.
All right, keep those on
Oop.
because that's what they're going to need to scan right now.
Oh.